So this first one is describe what you would see. So when you do these kind of questions, you always must be quite specific in terms of color changes, or if you see a gas being produced, you get fizzing. So you must try and be very specific in your response. So the question says, zinc sulfate is colorless. So let's put that information just underneath here for a moment. Zinc is a typical metal, so that is silver. And it tells you here, the reaction is left until it is complete. Now, you might remember that copper sulfate, because we used it a few times, is a blue color, and copper metal is that kind of red-brown color. We only need to get two observations in here to get the marks. So what I would say is that you would get this red-brown solid forming. So you would see that solid being produced, and you also, your solution would become colorless. Okay, that would get us 2 marks. Right, the next one. This is a redox reaction. Remember, core knowledge, redox means you have got reduction and oxidation taking place in one reaction. Oxidation, remember, is loss of electrons, and reduction is gain of electrons. So, explain what's been oxidized and what has been reduced in this particular bit. So the way to do this is to put the charges into the ionic compound. So for example, Cu is a 2 plus and SO4 is a 2 minus. Zinc is also 2 plus and SO4 is 2 minus. And where the zinc is on its own, it's just 0 and 0. So if we have a look at the, let's look at the zinc first of all. Zinc has gone from having no charge to forming a 2 plus ion. So how do you become positive? You become positive by losing electrons. So your zinc has formed Zn2 plus, and it's done that by losing electrons. So therefore, you say the zinc has been oxidized. If we go back to the copper, copper's gone from 2 plus to copper with no charge. So how do I make something that is positive become an atom with no charge? I must add negative electrons to it. So in here now, I would say, now be careful with this, you've got to say the copper ions are reduced. The copper ions are being reduced. They are gaining electrons. In terms of electrons, so here I would say zinc is losing electrons. Let's make sure we get all the marks. And the copper ion C2 plus ions are gaining electrons. But if you put the equation in, you wouldn't need to write those two last lines. Okay, this one here is a concentration question. And if you remember, whenever we do concentration questions, we have our amount, concentration, volume. We refer to this as a chicken vindaloo. I remember the order of it. And the question says, we're told the concentration, so we know the concentration. I'll put a tick next to that. Calculate the number of moles. Well, the number of moles is the amount. So I'm trying to find the amount, and I'm also told the volume is 50. Okay, so all I need to do in this question here is write down that the amount is the concentration times by the volume. So the concentration is 15.95, times that by the volume of 50. But remember, we have to divide that by 1,000, to get that into decimeters cubed. So if I just do that on my calculator here, so it's 15.95 times by 50, and then divide that answer by 1,000. I'm getting an answer here of 0.7975, and the units for that will be grams, sorry. Okay, the question, let's just check the question. The question says, calculate the number of moles. So my next job is to convert this to moles. So if I put down here my moles triangle, which is Mr. Moles is underneath the mass, and what I'm trying to work out here is the moles. So the moles is going to be the mass divided by the MR. The mass in this case is that 0.7975, and I've got to divide it by the MR. I'm going to do that over here. So the MR is, there's one copper, so copper is 63.5. I've got one sulfur, which is 32, and I've got 4 lots of oxygen, which is going to be 64. Let's just add all those up. So the answers are 63.5 plus 32 plus 64 is 159.5. So I'm going to put that into here, 159.5, and then just work that on my calculator, 0.7975 divided by 159.5, and that's going to give me an answer of 5 times by 10 to the minus 3, and that is moles. Okay, in terms of marks in that question, it's worth 3. You're going to get a mark in here for doing that, a mark in here for doing that, and then a mark in there for the final answer to that question. Okay, this next question, in another experiment, we have 0.43 moles of copper sulfate. Calculate the minimum mass of zinc that must be added to react with the copper sulfate. Okay, so if we just come back up to the equation one moment, we are reacting zinc and copper sulfate. That's a 1-to-1 ratio. So I've taken that here and I've written that there just to remind me it's a 1. So 1 mole of zinc is reacting with 1 mole of copper sulfate. So therefore, if I've got 0.043 moles of copper sulfate, I will have the same number of moles of zinc. So if I know how many moles of zinc I've got, what I'm trying to work out here is the mass. The mass according to the triangle is the MR times moles. The MR is 65 times by the number of moles is 0.043. Let's just plug that into my calculator as well. So I've got 65 times 0.043, and that's giving me an answer of 2.795. I'm just going to check, does the question want me to give it to any specific value? Calculate to 1 decimal place. So 1 decimal place, that's going to become 2.8 grams. It's 2 marks, so I get 1 mark for doing that bit, and then I get another mark for making sure I've got to 1 decimal place.